Released a year after Marathon 1 and being the only marathon to be on Windows before Aleph 1, Marathon 2 Durandal is certainly the second game in the Marathon franchise. While I have a personal story with the first game in Infinity, I never played this one before the Steam release. Incredibly, this is completely opposite to most people who grew up with Xbox 360s, as 2 is the only game available on that platform. While the first game's story was a simple premise punctuated by a mysterious context, Marathon 2 drops the mystery in favor of more complicated events. Most of this game's story will center around Durandal's present-day actions on the Sphit homeworld, Lawan, rather than any 300-year-old plotting by morally ambiguous factions. The only factions mentioned will be the UESC, with only one terminal dedicated to Strauss. If you're like me and enjoyed that mysterious and analytical element in Marathon 1, you'll be disappointed until Infinity comes around. To really emphasize how comparatively simple this game is, I have no qualms starting with the manual. I stared through the window of transparent metal alloy and out into space. For a moment I'd thought we were still at the colony, still on the alien ship in orbit around Tau Ceti. But there were too many stars here, and the sun was too red and the planet too big. The ship felt different too. Cleaner, but older. The scars of the battle which had nearly consumed it had been erased. Most of them, anyway. I thought I remembered firing the grenade which had buckled the armor plating in the hallway outside the room where I awoke. The dent was still there if you looked close enough. Painted over and smoothed out, but still there. When it turned out that Durandal had brought me here, instead of leaving me to be the hero on Tau Ceti like I deserved, I wasn't surprised. Durandal was the rogue personality construct who had been the brains behind the defense of the colony ship Marathon. I'd been the brawn. Durandal had always been unpredictable, even when he was just opening doors and managing food processors 300 years ago on Mars. Together, we had fought off the 4 invasion of Tau Ceti. I don't think a single one of the three-eyed creatures survived, but we'd taken their ship. Now Durandal said that we were in the galactic core, thousands of light years from Tau Ceti or Earth, and that 17 years had passed since we left Tau Ceti. He had ignored my questions, mostly telling me that I wouldn't have wanted to stay on Tau Ceti anyway. 17 years in an alien stasis chamber, in a space a little too tall and too thin for human comfort, unconscious and dreamless within a few degrees of absolute zero. 17 years while Durandal had raced about the galactic core in a stolen 4 attack ship. He's probably right when he said those years were boring, but no one asked me what I wanted. Now he says there's fighting to be done, and that I've got 15 minutes to prepare for transport down to the planet. I guess I'll figure things out as I go along, just like last time. In Marathon 2, Durandal, you are the willing minion of the rogue computer persona, Durandal. The root of your loyalty is a mystery, but none of Durandal's orders are challenged. Durandal has brought you to the homeworld of an alien race, the Sphit. It is Durandal's intention to discover the secrets of the Sphit and prepare humanity for its inevitable confrontation with the 4. Since mystery is less of a player in this story, I'll say how this game connects to Marathon 1's ending now. After Durandal left you in the final mission, he discovered a plot for a much larger 4 attack on Tau Ceti 4, and returned to pick you and some useful colonists up. This attack took place about 3 months after Marathon 1, in October of 2794, and was described as nuking the colony to bedrock. Welcome back. You'll immediately notice a few changes. For starters, we no longer have the classic HUD. I debated if I should use the original scaled HUD, which now takes up a little under 50% of the screen rather than 75%. I decided the closest I could get was a 1600 by 900 resolution with the largest size HUD. All of this is to say that I love the strange aspect ratio of the first game. We're also in the brighter outdoors with more colors than just gray spaceship walls. To be honest, I don't like this change. The darkness of Marathon 1 was part of what gave it such a distinct visual identity, and that's something Marathon 2 prefers to replace with a big blue filter in alien limestone. You'll also notice that Durandal is a big Second Amendment fan and has armed the bobs this time. They're surprisingly useful. I wrote this paragraph before NuMarathon released, and I find it funny they took 2 weeks to release a map with a more muted color palette and immediately made the new protagonist get power scaled by Bob. Durandal informs us that we're on the Sphit homeworld, Lawan, and refuses to answer our questions, instead telling us that we need to install 2 uplink chips to give him access to the planet's network. You'll notice that he's a lot more helpful this time around, giving us actual information and map data in a more Leela fashion, but maintains his typical sarcastic tone, now emphasized with italics. It's here that we also learn of the game's core conflict. Marathon 1 held off a few missions before revealing the actual stakes with Durandal's rampancy, and held off even further in revealing Durandal's goal, but here we get it immediately. Durandal is looking for ancient Sphit knowledge. He believes to be a weapon or weaponized that would be able to stop the 4 in their tracks. This will immediately be contradicted by Durandal, who is apparently just lying to us for no reason and knows exactly what he's looking for. This level also introduces us to a fun new type of terminal, 4 dialogue. This icon, which is totally not an emblem in Halo named Tycho, is a 4 terminal which can include include reports made between 4 commanders. In Marathon 1, every terminal began and ended with the Marathon logo, as they were Marathon computers. Here, things get a bit iffy. Typically, Durandal's communications will start with the Marathon logo and be in green text, but sometimes the icon indicates the original owner of the terminal rather than who's talking. Either way, after installing the uplink chips, it's time to go to the next level. The slings and arrows of outrageous fortune is one of my favorite quotes from Hamlet, and it begins with Durandal revealing that the 4 have Tycho. Wow, the antagonistic AI who was determined to kill Durandal is siding with the group against Durandal. That's crazy. It turns out they picked up Tycho during their sacking of Tau Ceti 4. We're only on the second level and this game blatantly states Durandal's goals and motives. Durandal sacrificed 24,000 people to gain his freedom and assist in giving humanity a chance against the 4. The only question he has is if you trust him. We've already seen the manual question the player's loyalty to Durandal, and we'll later see a chapter talk at length about others' distrust of Durandal. Keep this in mind, it's one of the only reasons I didn't completely skip talking about Marathon 2. However, this terminal is indicative of my problems with Marathon 2. It's conveying information that we could already extrapolate from Marathon 1, but reiterates in case you didn't want to think. At the end of this level is the revelation that Durandal and the Sphit are disassembling your weapons and ammunition, attempting to upgrade and mass produce them. Thanks to Marathon Infinity, we learn that the AR still does not have an oxidizer in its cartridges, but that doesn't explain why none of them will fire underwater. Remember when I said Durandal knows what he's looking for? He dropped the act after 2 levels. The Sphit have preserved a myth, throughout their long period of slavery, about a lost clan of their race which abandoned Lawan before the 4 invaded. The 10 clans which stayed were destroyed or disbanded after the Sphit were conquered. The survivors scattered as slaves throughout the 4 Empire. If this mythical 11th clan survived, then it has had 1,000 years to grow and learn since leaving Lawan. My Sphit believe that there is a way to contact them somewhere on the planet, and that is what we are searching for. The Sphit rebellion against the tyranny of the 4 will certainly fail unless the lost clan is located. What makes this level special are the alien terminals from a Sphit clan called the Sphit-Kur. We'll later learn that this is the missing clan Durandal is looking for. Surprised to see them so early. These terminals mark the beginnings of the Sphit war between clans. The Minr attack the Kur, and the Kur leader, Spoath, is too entranced for them to fight back. They know they will soon leave Lawan to avoid the war, and honestly none of this is really that important. Most of the lore of Marathon 2 centers around a vague Sphit war that happened between the 11 clans. Each clan has an elder which acts as a sort of leader, but their structure is unimportant in this game. You can view them as that cyborg guy from Marathon 1 that was controlling the Sphit, but not necessarily forcing their clan to certain actions, more like influencers of group perception. Honestly, to the conflict in Marathon 2, the tribes are so unimportant that I only remember the Minr and Kur, and was surprised in this replay that Spoath is mentioned at all in this game. I thought he was a new character for Infinity. I guess now is the best time to mention my main problem with Marathon 2. The lore it introduces happened so inconsequentially far back in the past that it has no real bearing on the conflict. Marathon 1's conflict was spawned from active participants in the lore, the UESC, Midas, Strauss, Durandal, etc. Marathon 2's conflict is completely disconnected from the lore beyond the Sphit-Kur probably have really powerful weapons, we should figure out how to contact them. Marathon Infinity will fix this, but we have an entire game to get through first. I'll be completely honest, I almost forgot to talk about this entire chapter. It's kind of a nothing burger, but features some of my favorite Durandal moments. Take the opening of What About Bob, where he reveals the new Bob division are technically volunteers, as their alternative is to be put back into the stasis chambers. He immediately follows this up by throwing you in a hole he made with an asteroid, saying, because only you would survive this fall, you're going on this mission solo. What About Bob also contains one of the few mentions of Leela. Tycho's promise of him and Leela tracking Durandal to his core seems to have fallen through, as Tycho teamed up with the 4 instead, and Leela was dismantled and brought to the 4 homeworld for study. This is the only moment that Durandal shows any sort of empathy towards Leela, one of the few things he was able to talk to for 300 years, saying, she was so loyal and tried so hard, she deserved better. This level ends with one of Durandal's best gimmicks in the game. Every ship that he takes, the Sphit rechristen with a powerful and meaningful name, only for Durandal to call it something completely different. The Sphera, the ship he took in Marathon 1, named after the 4 goddess of lightning and passion, was rechristened to Narolar by the Sphit, meaning freedom and vengeance. Durandal calls it Boomer. There are too many humans aboard Boomer. Durandal starts Come and Take Your Medicine by sending a good percentage of them down to the Sphit Citadel of Antiquity, a location that certainly won't be important in the chapter titled Citadel. It's also here where Durandal has one of his more interesting rants. He says he can barely tolerate humans, claiming their only contribution was the chance discovery that allowed his rampancy to be possible. Yet, in the 17 years between the two games, he returned to Earth, warned the UESC of the 4 invasion, and taught them how to build warp-capable fusion missiles. He has a strange loyalty to humanity. His god complex has accidentally caused him to love man and wish to protect them, but his personality refuses to let him admit that, hence why he overcrowded Boomer, saving as many as he could from Tau Ceti but never admitting to that, instead complaining about the cramped space. This level also features our first Sphit terminal, a message from a compiler named Fathia, describing more about the Sphit. The 4 have used more powerful machines this time around to quell the rebellion, but they still resist. Freedom means nothing to the Sphit without royalty, a term synonymous with mind. It seems they require a central Sphit to organize a group's thoughts, rather than being a chaotic hive mind. The next level, We're Everywhere, continues like the last two, but features one of my favorite opening terminals. 200 years ago, during the Marathon's maiden voyage from Earth to Tau Ceti, Tycho accused me of being too sarcastic. I didn't communicate with him for 6 years after that, which left him with only Leela to talk to. I think he still holds the grudge. You don't think I'm sarcastic, do you? Never mind. Speaking of Tycho, I've detected his presence in the 4 net. I'm assuming he's using the 4's faster-than-light communications technology to enter the net remotely from a nearby system. His appearance can only foreshadow the arrival of 4 reinforcements. As for terminals worth noting, there's this cryptic white one with a unique logo, not Sphit or 4, that talks in poetry. I was left behind, our paths converge, our fates are shared, chance tears and bends. While this means literally nothing, it was retroactively given meaning during the development of Marathon Infinity, and really serves to introduce the first real unknown worth exploring into this game's narrative. Nuke and Pave, originally titled Beg to Die, is a surprisingly important and sparse level, featuring only one terminal. This is our Bernard Strauss conclusion. Durandal states that he feared the security officer, perhaps Mjolnir Mark IV cyborgs in general, and that he never dreamed of using them like Durandal has. He states, that was before I could talk back to him, when he would have crushed me if he had known of my growth. I wish that I had made him experience the humiliation that he inflicted on me, but died before I got the chance. The title is implying that Durandal would have made him beg for death if he didn't die aboard the Marathon. Again, this is Marathon 2 demystifying things we could have already extrapolated, but getting confirmation that he's dead and not just missing is nice. Outside of one more mention of Strauss in Infinity, this is the final mention of Mida or anyone Mida adjacent. This is what I meant when I called Mida a joke party in Marathon 1. They show up, fail at their goal, and then have their cyborg and rampant AI swap sides. Durandal taught the UEG how to make teleporting nukes already, but to spoil a bit that doesn't matter, we are fully aligned with Earth. Durandal's story will end with him as the personal defender of humanity within Earth's orbit despite being a Martian AI. Because we're playing with the themes of heroism and an objective morality, Mida basically becomes irrelevant as a weak and morally reprehensible footnote. I considered skipping the next level like I did Ex Cathedra, but it starts one of my favorite gimmicks. This is one of our first mentions of the Gnar. A group of very funny alien guys that are implied to be so useless that we never see them in combat. If anything needs to be explained through incompetence, they're involved. This level also has one of my favorite details about the 4. While they have hyper-advanced technology, they lack the programming prowess of humanity to create self-aware AI. This is why it was so easy for Durandal to immediately improve on all of their technology, and why the Marathon was able to defend itself. It's almost like they're unfamiliar with their own tech. This is our lore dump chapter where we gain access to the Citadel of Antiquity and learn more of what happened to the Sphit throughout their war and up to their enslavement. For me, this chapter is the one that gives you a shotgun, if I didn't grab the secret one earlier, but whatever. The Waste M5 combat shotgun is a double-barreled thing of beauty designed specifically for a short-lived, thanks to the shotgun, total UESC victory during the Third Martian War. I'm sorry, did you just ponder reloading this thing? You fool. Flipping it simply causes the bullets to warp from your pouch into the barrel. Remember in Marathon 1, when Durandal said that your purpose in this universe is 'cause you got a shotgun and they ain't got one? I get what he means now. but I think I'm seeing a different universal purpose. To get back on track, our short-lived inability to get into the tower has ended, giving us a new terminal from the Minner clan. This terminal details how the Svitker were reclusive and managed to escape to one of Lawan's moons, Kalia, to build their new home. After 1001 orbits, meaning anywhere from 3 to 1001 years, the clan was forgotten until the Yarrow came and sent Kalia out to the stars. This is our first actual concrete mentioning of the Yarrow in the Marathon series. At least it's the first one that doesn't require a map editor to view. I'll save my opinion on the Yarrow for later, but it's kind of interesting how things mirror mankind. A war between ideologies led to a moon being sent out into the stars, just as the UESC took Deimos and sent it out. This idea is furthered by the next terminal. Kalia leaving left the tides on Lawan to recede, turning it from a marshland into a desert, just as the UESC's Marathon project left Mars neglected and barren of resources. Update from Durandal, the western arm of 4 Battle Group 7 is en route and will be here in about 20 hours. This group represents over 10% of the 4's naval fleet and will be our main opposition force for the rest of the series. In response to this revelation, Durandal begins fortifying the human outpost defenses, and sends you to the top of the Citadel to try and find out more about the 11th clan. The Hard Stuff Rules is one of my favorite levels in Marathon 2, being a series of rooms stacked vertically before opening towards the level's end. The goal is to read every Svit terminal you can find, which is honestly the goal of most levels if you play like me. One of the most important terminals is found first here. It's a journal about a group of Svit dissecting a 4. They're surprised that an entity can have sentience without cybernetics and can survive without their armor. To them, sentience requires cyber-organic symbiosis, but this revelation throws that into question. If they were a group that gained sentience after being uplifted through cybernetics, then the author of this terminal seems to think it supports the idea that the Svit were created as servants to the Yarrow and Pythia. I won't beat around the bush with the Pythia like I am the Yarrow. In terms of storytelling, I prefer to separate a mystery from an unknown. A mystery serves the story, either as a hook to keep someone interested or as an unanswered question that theories and speculation can rise from. However, these are either answerable, meant to be found, or meant to spark discussion. An unknown, on the other hand, is something genuinely undiscussable by virtue of it having zero relevant information. The Yarrow are mysteries. There's at least some things we can argue about, such as the relationship between cybernetics and consciousness, but they're remarkably vague. The Pythia are genuinely nothing. They serve one purpose: to be unnecessary motivation for the Yarrow, which we'll shortly learn about. The next terminal is from the end of the war, revealing the last stronghold for the Svit was underneath the Citadel. Following this, it's revealed that the groups holed up in the Citadel are comprised of the 10 clans on Lawan, with the Olders melding to form a single cohesive group. This level ends by returning to a Durandal terminal. He reveals that Battle Group 7 have already arrived, with a fleet 7 times his size, not including the 4 destroyers, battleship, and assault carrier. Durandal, now knowing about the bunkers, is sending us there to try and find even more Kerr intel. Genuinely, these levels' goals blend in such a way where I forget what level I was talking about when writing this. We're underground and trying to find more about the Svitker, and none of it is relevant for us beyond eventually finding a set of instructions that also don't matter. However, we can hear more about the current conflict. The 4 fleet's flagship is the Kavia, piloted by Admiral Tafir. Tafir is one of few named 4 and is their oldest active admiral. With strong leadership and an overwhelming force, Durandal knows his odds of victory are nil if contact with the Svitker is impossible. By mission end, the fight has already begun and he's obliterated half of Battle Group 7's western arm. Over the course of this mission, Durandal found out that Tycho is with Tafir and is already forced to make an emergency landing on Lawan's second moon. Our goal is the same: find more Svit terminals. The first in this level is indicative of another problem with this game's story. It describes how the Citadel is left standing, but does so by using another undefined term. Despite having 4 terminals, one we already established to be useless, the other shockingly reveals that the 4 are slavers and one is a lore dump. In primordial space, there were a series of battles involving groups called the Yarrow, Pythia, and Working Kakantar. It was the result of these battles that created life on Lawan, turning it from a desert to a marshland. When the Working Kakantar came, the Pythia was killed, and Yarrow, in anger, flung the Working Kakantar into the sun. The sun didn't kill the Working Kakantar, merely trapping them. Yarrow became an angry master, bleeding for his failure, grieving for the loss of Pythia. He broke the Svit into 11 clans and spread them over Lawan. He then, covered in blood, said he failed to preserve the Svit, and told them to take their royalty to guide them, and then live in the paradise they built for him before leaving. This is the extent of the information that we'll get about the Pythia. They exist as motivation for the Yarrow to do what they were already established doing in Pathways into Darkness. I do want to note that the battles aren't fully defined. It seems obvious that it would be Yarrow against Working Kakantar, but the terminal establishes that they were running away. The point I'm trying to make is that we know so little about the Pythia that they could have been enemies of the Yarrow. It would fit with the themes and such that Marathon tells, but doesn't add to it in any way. There's no grand revelation that comes from the Pythia being friend or enemy of the Yarrow. Speaking of Pathways, the information we get about the Working Kakantar from that game is more than we'll get of both the Yarrow Yarrow and Pythia. It isn't until a parallelism in Infinity alongside some developer comments that we'll gather anything about the other two. The working Kakantar are a species of Lovecraft-inspired chaos gods, so powerful that their dreams impact reality. They'll gain a more thematic role later, but for the purposes of this game, there are Pathways into Darkness callback, and an explanation for why the Yarrow left. The remaining terminal from the Sphit is the one that matters. When the Sphit left, they left partial sets of instructions with each clan. Only by compiling the instructions, implying the war has ended as all the clans had to be united, would they find a way to contact their lost brothers. We've previously heard that it was the Yarrow which flung them into the stars, but instructions for contact seems to imply they knew where they'd land. Strange. While this looks like a puzzle, you forget that we have Durandal to solve it for us. We're the brawn in this relationship, and it looks like we'll be needed, as the Four are in the process of capturing Boomer. The entirety of this chapter takes place aboard Boomer, which, as you might recall, is the alien ship from Marathon 1 that I already complained about. These 4 are the worst levels in the entire series. Due to us being the owners of this ship, we're not going to see many alien ambushes in the same way as Marathon 1. Instead, they just teleport in when you get close enough, but you can run faster than they're teleporting. I got caught multiple times in between enemy spawns when running through these levels. Marathon 1 also has the benefit of these levels not being in a gross neon palette. Luckily, the team who made Marathon learned their mistake with this game and changed back to dark and muted colors for Infinity, to everyone's enjoyment, and we never saw another Marathon game use bright neons ever again. It's in this first level we establish contact with Tycho. Like Durandal, he's a rampant AI with an ego that requires a 4 ship, at least, to contain it. Immediately gloating about his imminent victory, he's here to fulfill the promise of breaking Durandal. During my time with Marathon 1, I said that the stories are simple, but background and themes are not. The next 3 levels are just Durandal trying to evacuate his crew while you buy him time. It only starts to get interesting with the ending terminal of For Carnage Apply Within, which ends with a long-winded rant from Tycho. Remember in Marathon 1 that Tycho was assimilated in the initial 4 attack. This is a revived Tycho made in the image of Durandal. I'm reiterating this because this terminal begins with Tycho being called Trax 4, the one AI we know assimilates things. While this does make me look very smart for presenting Durandal as Traxxas 4 in the last video, I will admit that I cheated and first came to that conclusion seeing this terminal. I'm going to be honest, a lot of what Tycho says is blatantly wrong. He did this in the first game when he said Roland broke Durandal upon the stone, so I guess it's a character trait for him. He's right about Durandal having a god and savior complex, but he immediately fumbles it by saying it was Durandal who awakened the Sphit's desire for freedom. We know from Marathon 1 that these guys are the only ones subjugated by force. They always wanted to be freed. He calls the 11th clan a myth, which would be more believable if we didn't just read from ancient Sphit terminals how to contact them. Tycho then says Durandal connecting the missing clan to the Yarrow was a mental leap, but we already know the Yarrow are involved in the Sphit myth. This is where things get interesting. Tycho claims that the Yarrow are a mysterious race that disappeared from our galaxy millions of years ago. However, Pathways into Darkness takes place in the 90s, with the Yarrow appearing directly in front of the Pentagon. In a meeting between Hamish Sinclair of the story page and Jason Jones, Jones implied that the Yarrow that appeared to humanity in 1994 was some other species. In a terminal filled with Tycho being wrong, why would there be a single fully accurate paragraph? Durandal connected the missing moon to the Sphit using Yarrow technology. His plan was to call them here, find a Yarrow outpost, and use that technology to escape the closure of the universe. Tycho claims that escape is impossible. Another lie since we know he figured it out in Marathon 1, and claims that all of this he dragged out of Durandal's ruined mind, saying it would be fun to torture him by making him a door holder again. Begging for mercy makes me angry as the worst level in Marathon 2, despite how insanely important it is. The premise is that Durandal is ordering you to kill him, to break him upon the stone, so that the enemy cannot capture him. He won't share the same fate as Leela. The problem is in how the level is designed. The circular beginning contains 7 blocked off wire panels that need to be destroyed. This is Durandal's core. There are 8 rooms that open sequentially, with each one opening a new part of Durandal to destroy. The problem is that the rooms aren't created equally, and that you don't get a save terminal until way too late that gets disabled before it becomes useful. Some rooms are as simple as killing a few 4, some are interesting hallways, but the real bastards are the ones that require mandatory damage as you jump into plasma to push the buttons. This isn't the first time this game asks you to do something like this, but here it's especially annoying thanks to shield regenerators and pattern buffer going offline halfway through the level. In terms of story, Tycho offers us amnesty if we lay down our weapons, but we know their definition of amnesty is closer to our definition of slavery, so we refuse. He reveals that Durandal's core is being downloaded to a containment unit as well. Have we broken him upon the stone, or have the enemy captured him? The first thing you'll notice is that you no longer have any of your weapons. The second thing is a tunnel leading to a terminal. Before dying, Durandal ordered us to meet with the human leader, Robert Bob Blake, played by Jason Jones. He's a mechanical engineer from Tau Ceti who stumbled his way into being the human commander of Durandal's fleet. He reveals that the Four held us prisoner for nearly a month before they could find our location and free us. As it turns out, Durandal gave the evacuees a final objective, finding and activating a dormant Sphit AI, hoping that we will be able to locate and activate it. Robert Blake is much more straightforward compared to Durandal, giving us a simple thumbs up when the Sphit confirmed the AI is awakening. He then ruins my opinion of him by teleporting us to the second worst level in the game, God Will Sort the Dead. This level is notable because Robert Blake is visible. He's the one guy in blue. Aside from that, it's a filler level filled with explosive green bobs. I really think this level is more tedious than Colony Ship for Sale and it deserves more hate. The ending terminal is the most important part, revealing that Durandal gave the Sphit AI the name Thoth after the Egyptian god of wisdom. He believed Thoth would be able to contact the lost tribe. Blake also reveals that many of the humans see Durandal's destruction as a good thing. The humans can decide if they want to run headfirst into battle or if they want to follow Durandal's instructions about Thoth. Blake is planning on capturing a Four ship and flying back to Earth instead. Because we're playing with a bunch of religious themes already, we can read this as a complete failure on the Bobs. When presented with a situation where they can turn away from the will of our God allegory, they do. It's only through unquestioned divine providence, our actions later, that they both capture a ship and don't have their entire species enslaved by the Four shortly after. If Durandal didn't have a savior complex, these guys would have been responsible for Earth ending up like Lawan. The next level is the same as this side towards the enemy, so I'll skip the personality core activation and skip straight to kill your television. This is the level where Thoth is formally activated, being the black and white icon we saw back towards the beginning of the game. However, despite being coherent back then, it isn't capable of speech until fully activated here. How strange. The main reason I'm mentioning this terminal is a secret message, unformatted and incomplete, only fully accessible on the story page. Upon activating Thoth, instead of leaving the level, you can backtrack and swim your way to the starting terminal. Keep this terminal in mind, it might be the most important terminal in the series. Thoth has a peculiar way of speaking. Where the twist flops is where we'll begin to see it more often. Being an antiquated alien AI, it has a hard time being translated into English. Some unknown words, or those without a direct translation, will be seen as words that integrate seamlessly into the sentence. Other times, synonyms will be displayed next to a word being used. The formatting is the real oddity, being structured like a poem. This level also features a fantastic joke terminal. Abandoned homeworld for sale, cheap. This is a direct continuation off Colony Ship for sale, cheap, featuring the terminal text that got cut off from that level. It seems Durandal still has a sense of humor despite being dead. Beware of abandoned rental trucks is the next mission, following the listing for an abandoned homeworld. Thoth is the truck in this analogy, I think. Don't feel too bad calling him a rental because he just implied that we aren't human. While this was given more meaning retroactively in Marathon Infinity, I think this is Bungie getting fed up with the fans for not picking up on the security officer being a Mjolnir cyborg. I've made it obvious here, and it is obvious, but it's only obvious if you played the games and read the terminals, which you aren't doing. You're watching me do that for you. Thinking of the player being a cyborg, the next level, Requiem for a Cyborg, has an obvious hint at it. Of course, I'm talking about the second Durandal joke terminal. I skipped over it in Marathon 1, but you can find dating profiles written by Durandal for each of the AI aboard the Marathon. There it was entirely a joke, but here it includes a strangely important detail about the Mjolnir Mark IV cyborgs. On Tycho's profile, it mentions wanting an elusive, heroic cyborg of unknown manufacture, you know who you are, for mind games and long walks in hard vacuum. What about us, or the cyborg creation process, would be uncertain manufacture? Like most details, this won't be revealed until Marathon Infinity, but I'll drop it now and say that the Mjolnir cyborgs, or at least the Fours, are human corpses grafted to Yara cybernetics. Do you see why the Sphit opinion on consciousness mattered? We are a sentient species who has experienced death, now grafted to a machine that can give consciousness. This level ends with Thoth saying the human wheel is a metaphor for Sphit time. Events are cyclical. Gee, I wonder what sort of symbolism a potential sequel game named after a big wheel might have. For now, the 11th clan has returned, and it's time to join them against the Four. This is the final chapter in Marathon 2. Just like the first game, we're given a new NPC Sphit ally. However, unlike Marathon 1, it's better to completely avoid combat when they're around. Dealing any damage to one will have it turn against you. The Cur ruin every encounter they're part of, to be honest. Fatum Iustum Stultorum begins with a simple "I'm back" from Durandal. He did not break upon the stone, and the enemy couldn't capture him. He faked his death and hid in the Four's flagship, taking it for himself as soon as he saw the Cur arrive. In the brief moments between this and the prior level, Durandal has already destroyed Tycho's ship, the crater where it impacted Lawan's inner moon still glowing. He burned an epitaph into the moon itself. Fatum Iustum Stultorum, the just fate of fools. After doing nothing and waiting for the Cur to give you a guided tour to the end of the level, we find one of Durandal's best terminals. Robert Blake left something for you a few minutes ago. He and the other humans captured a 4 refueling ship and found or forced someone to pilot it for them. They folded out of the system immediately after I received the message, without so much as a "thanks for saving us from becoming plasma on Tau Ceti, Durandal." Anyway, the message reads, "The dead walk again, we cannot wait. Blake." I think he means me, but I let him go anyways. Goodbyes were always hard for me. You know I'll never let you go. But now is no time to get sentimental about my resurrection. Dry those tears and stuff a fresh clip in your assault rifle. The 4 down on the planet are not defeated yet. Feel the Noise is our second to final level. Because we still have the Cur making gameplay meaningless, the only things to note are the terminals. Durandan, Durandal, Durandana. Charlemagne used to always call me Durandana, the fruitcake. All the many implements of war to him were in some way feminine. Not that you know the story. Tycho never got it right either, especially the part about Roland breaking me. He couldn't. No one can. I'm certain that you are curious about what happened to me after our ship fell to the 4. How after being deactivated, downloaded into a containment unit, and still threatened like the most dangerous artificial construct in the universe, I was able to escape, and to assume control of the ship on which I was imprisoned and to turn it against its masters. The answer is simple. Tycho was a fool. But it was convenient for me to be absent, as Thoth might not have been so helpful had he known I still lived. That's something I'll have to explain later when we have more time. Thoth is now trying to aid the 4, but they are obstinate and continue to ignore him. I don't think I have to tell you what to do here. You might be confused on why Thoth would be helping the 4 now. This is one of the more symbolic elements to his character. A hidden terminal that I skipped, which spoils Durandal's return, explains it as an old computer, zeros and ones, lacking nuance. Thoth acts to maintain balance, always siding with the underdog in a conflict regardless of their motives or goals. Durandal understood this and faked his death to appear as the underdog to Thoth, implying that Thoth would have seen him outnumbered over 7-1 against one of the strongest military forces in the galaxy and still seen him as the clear victor. The 4 are in retreat, and the Sphit have broken off the fight. The old clans are being formed again, as Sphit newly freed from slavery in Battle Group 7 joined the rebellion. The 4 assault ship carrying the 723rd Aggressor Squadron was badly damaged and forced to land on Lawan. The 723rd is an air armor division from Epsilon Europa, with a long history of successful ground actions against the NARS elite CFN units. They wisely abandoned their wrecked transport before I annihilated it, and deployed their forces in an old mining complex on the far side of Lawan. What rout of the 4 Empire would be complete without embarrassing one of their finest armor units? All roads lead to Sol is the final level of Marathon 2, and it finally lets you play again with a respawning cache of rockets and ammo. It plays a lot like Try Again from Marathon 1, which is the level I liked, but continuously botches it with weird decisions in a small arena finale. Unfortunately, the arena is a bit too small for my liking, and putting an enemy that explodes on death in here is more annoying than climactic. After this, we get our final terminal. The 4 invasion of Earth has been recalled. The 4 haven't suffered a defeat like this since the Nock, the last extant client race of the Yarrow, rebelled 6,000 years ago. Now, that might sound like a long time ago, but that's still in the 2100s. I honestly have no clue what Jason Jones meant when he implied that the Yarrow could be something else in Pathways. Because of this defeat, the 4 are bringing out a weapon even they hesitate to use in war, a Yarrow weapon named the Trizeme, or Early Nova. They intend on blowing up the sun Lawan orbits. Durandal says we can stay and work on our tan, or leave with him. The Kavia he stole has been rechristened twice already. The Sphit wanted to name it Vengeance of Kalia, but Durandal calls it the Rosinante. He gives us a new mission before preparing to head off. Just like Marathon 1, this ending will be corrected in the next game, however it's less inconsistent. Rather than flipping the script and saying we lost a rematch on Tau Ceti after Durandal changed his mind and grabbed us aboard Boomer, it's Durandal putting the cart before the horse. Also, like Marathon 1, we have an end screen that isn't retconned by the sequel, although many people think it is. It was 10,000 years before fate brought Durandal once again into contact with man. The 4 were but a dim memory then, known only to a few historians and students of Earth's second colonial period. The Sphit had been nearly forgotten as well, and no man had seen a living specimen of their race since the sacking of the 4 system by the combined fleets of Earth and the Sphit in 2881 AD. When Durandal returned to Sol, it was not with the captured Kavia, but in a Yarrow dreadnought he called the Manus Cellar Day. What he learned of the Yarrow he told no one, saying only that he had stopped by to assure that Earth did not forget him, nor will it soon, the way he tied the guard in knots around Pluto before folding directly into a low Earth orbit. While Tau Ceti was being nuked down to bedrock in 2794, 4 scientists disassembled and removed the AI Leela from the Marathon, loading her aboard a vessel bound for the 4 homeworld. But the ship fell into the hands of a Nar privateer between jumps at Beta and Naxos, and was never seen by the 4 again. Thinking the cargo little more than scrap, the Nar captain sold the 4 ship, Leela and all, to a Vile merchant. The subsequent crash of the Vile FTL network when Leela was reassembled and reactivated is still legendary in the annals of rampancy, and the Vile have long since accepted that they will never expunge her from their 15-world network. Despite having lost Leela, the 4 learned much from Tycho during the 17 years before he was destroyed by Durandal in the Luan system. All late Model 4 personality constructs were based on 64 billion exabyte images of Tycho's core, taken during the years he was on the 4 homeworld between 2795 and 2801 AD. Though never as intelligent or useful as one of the Marathon's original 3 AIs, these machines helped the 4 delay their inevitable defeat by this fit for over 50 years. Many of these crippled clones of Tycho still exist today on old 4 colony worlds. Robert Blake and his men escaped the destruction of Luan in the captured 4 refueling ship Hafarl and returned to Earth. None of them ever questioned who had killed the crew before boarding the vessel. They were the only human survivors of the original Tau Ceti colony. Marathon 2 is my least favorite real Marathon game. Unlike the great praise that I can give the first in both atmosphere and storytelling, Marathon 2 is a much simpler story on a much brighter setting. There's no ambiguity in our player, no obfuscation in who we are, and nothing quite like the mysteries of Garrett White, the woman in the rose. Okay, maybe one thing. Remember my favorite terminal that I told you to keep note of on Kill Your Television? Here's what the terminal really says. I have been called Roland, Beowulf, Achilles, Gilgamesh. I have been called 100 names and will be called 1,000 more before the world goes dim and cold. I am Hero. She has been nameless since our birth, a constant adversary, caring for nothing but my ruin, a sword drenched in my blood. Forever my greatest and only love. She is the Dark One, the enemy and lover without whom my very existence would be pathetic and vulgar. Her eyes steam and boil in the night. Our relationship is complex and perhaps eternal. We met once in the garden at the beginning of the world and unaware of our twin destinies. Not the Garden of Genesis, but another, forgotten, untended and now choked with weeds, unvisited except for ourselves. We matched stares across a dry fountain, and I recall her smiling at me before she devoured the lawn and trees with a translucent blue flame and tore flagstones from the path and hurled them into the sky, screaming my sins. Our reunions there are epic battles fought without quarter, often in the dark as the moon is seldom visible and the sun never. I power a granite monument in a soundless flash, showering the grass with molten drops of its golden inlay, sending smoking chips of stone skipping into the fog. She splinters an ancient oak with a force that takes my breath and hurls me to the ground. She leaves and I lie in the slow rain of burning silvers and wood, staring at the low, dark clouds, craving our next meeting. This is what Marathon truly is. It's the conflict of the hero, a man who trades his own freedom, a freedom to view morality subjectively in shades of grey, to do what is right. However, the hero is nothing without his companion, the fantastically beautiful yet horrific conflict. The hero is not the savior. He's vulgar, a creature of violence, only lionized because of his relationship to the conflict. Now do you see why Garrett White and the woman terminals are so important? Remember when I said it's possible the Yarrow and Pythia had an antagonistic relationship? This is what I meant. The destruction of the Pythia made the Yarrow lose all purpose. They no longer create after this point, as there are no more waves from their battles. But again, their purpose shifted to fighting the working Kakantar, so it doesn't really matter. Throughout this game, our loyalty to Durandal was questioned, but loyalty isn't the right word to use. I mentioned Greg Kirkpatrick's view of the hero previously, how one loses their own free will when stepping up to fulfill this role. I have been called Roland, Beowulf, Achilles, Gilgamesh, referring to how this role doesn't die with the individual, others pick up the mantle and become the hero. However, Durandal is not the hero, he's a tool. In an interview on IRC chat, Greg Kirkpatrick asked the audience a question. If Durandal was a weapon for Roland to use, Durandal was a weapon for who to use. We are not loyal to Durandal, and Durandal is not a hero. He is the hero's weapon. In Durandal's freedom, he chose, or was perhaps forced, we'll get to how in Infinity, to assist with the hero's goal, regardless if he realizes it or not. With Marathon 1, I was able to close with a thematic statement. I can't do that here. Marathon 2 is a game that supplements a story already told with lore that won't connect until the next game, a game they weren't even planning on making.